Anish Giri makes his way to the playing hall with his trusted second Jan Smeets. The Dutch number one is taking on a big challenge. He's playing against the man in form in the 7th round of the FIDE Candidates, Javokhir Sindarov. Sindarov enters in with his second Mukhiddin Madaminov, and look at that look on Sindarov's face. He means business. He's on 5.5 out of 6, and he would love to take that lead even further ahead. But Anish Giri is known as one of the most solid players out in the world of chess. Will it be possible for Javokhir to beat him as well? We'll see. For now, he enters in a handshake here, and Sindarov adjusts his pieces. Anish has had a pretty decent event until now. He's on 50% with 1 loss to Pragnananda and 1 win against Andrei Esipenko and 4 draws. Meanwhile, we have Muhammad Al Mudaka, a grandmaster and a very, very well-known personality in the world of chess, the man behind a lot of events happening in Qatar, and he makes the first move. The players are ready, everyone's ready. This is going to be a super exciting game, and this, dear friends, is the Lotus Chess game of the day. Lotus Chess is a wonderful app that helps you improve your chess. It actually gives you different options to learn openings and actually helps you to drill them. So it's not just by studying, but you have to make the moves on the board, and that is very useful for you in remembering your openings, learning new stuff, and they have different modes available to you and also training that adapts to you. So download the app for Android and iOS from the link in the description. And now we come back to the game. Pawn to d4 by Javokhir Sindarov. Anish brings his knight out to f6. And pawn comes up to c4. And pawn to e6 played, opening up the bishop. We have knight to f3. And now pawn comes up to d5. This is the queen's gambit declined. Knight to c3 played. And we have bishop to b4, the Ragozin variation that Anish has played with both colors. Sindarov goes for bishop g5. There are many different ways to play here, but he chooses bishop g5. h6, a question is asked to the bishop on g5. It takes on f6. And this, what Sindarov is going for, is supposed to be very solid. Queen f6, e3, opening up the bishop's path here. Castles, and you're not losing the pawn in the center because the knight is pinned here. Javokhir plays rook c1, and Anish now takes the pawn on c4. Bishop takes c4. White seems to have a nice lead in development, but black has the bishop pair, which you shouldn't underestimate. Pawn to c5 played. Now castles here. And pawn takes on d4. Now knight takes d4 is maybe like a draw for, because after bd7 and knight c6, black equalizes without any difficulty. But knight e4 is a more fighting move. It's played many times. In fact, Anish himself played it against Gukesh at Vaikanze. Queen e7 takes with the pawn. Now you have an isolated pawn in the center, but black has to play carefully. Rook d8, bringing the rook in, attacking the pawn. Now a3 is played often, but Javokhir goes queen e2. He brings his queen away and lines it up against the black queen, so d5 could be in the air. Knight to c6, putting pressure on the pawn on d4. And here rook to d1, defending the pawn on d4. And Anish Giri goes bishop a5 to put pressure on the d4 pawn. Bishop to b5. The knight on c6 is under pressure. He goes bishop d7. And now knight jumps to c5. Attacking the pawn on b7 and also the bishop on d7. Anish quickly gets his bishop back to e8 and Javokhir pushes and Anish instantly takes. Maybe a small error because taking here makes so much more sense and black is around equal. But in fact, after ed, queen e7, knight e7, now there's a fork with the rook and the bishop. That creates a lot of problems. He goes rook d b8. And here Sindarov can play bishop a6 and he would have a very nagging edge, but he goes and picks up the bishop. And Anish, you could see his expression there. He was like, whew, thanks, that looks nice for me. Rook takes b5, taken. The knight is attacked, so is the pawn. The knight comes back, now blocking the path, but of course Anish is going to play a5. Yeah, he pushes his pawn to a5. His idea is a4 and the b2 pawn is hanging. Sindarov defends the pawn on b2 with his rook. He wants to bring his knight to d4. a4 played. Knight to d4. If we take stock of the situation, white definitely is the one for choice. The reason is simple. You will see that this knight is very well positioned. It cannot be moved. The pawn on d5 is a bit weak. You have both the knights which are doing pretty good. The bishop on e8 is a bit passive. So taking all of these into consideration, it's a very minuscule edge that white has. And it's something that gives Sindarov a reason to play on. b3. All of that said, Anish is an incredibly tenacious player. AB, AB. And now pawn to f6 played. He would like to bring his knight somehow to the e5 square. g4, Javokhir starts to gain a bit of space. And Anish says h5. I also need some breathing space, and exchanging pawns, I believe, is to Anish's advantage. Knight e1. Putting the knight maybe to d3, but also possible is knight c2 to knight e3. hg taken and takes back with the g pawn, with the h pawn. The knight comes in to g6 and f3 played here by Sindarov. Anish brings his knight to e5. You know, Anish is an amazing defender because he just feels where his pieces belong. He sees what are the squares and he just makes those moves. And now g5, putting the pawns on the opposite color of his bishop. So these are on dark squares. Knight d3, offering a trade of knights. Bishop goes to d7, stopping the white knight from coming in. King g3 played. So knight takes knight. And this is something which is questionable because, you know, Anish could play simply with his king, but maybe he didn't like the fact that the knight was jumping in here. So he decided to take, and now rook b6. Rook comes back to d2. Now this is getting a bit dangerous if you think about it, because the rooks are swinging over to the h file. King f7. Anish has 14 minutes only. Javokhir has 1 hour 14 minutes. We are on move 36. Few more moves to make. d5 pawn under pressure. Anish basically says, take it, Javokhir. If you take it, I'm happy. Bishop e6. Javokhir says, I won't take it. I won't activate your bishop. I'll try to come in via the h file. He goes rook d6, defending the pawn. And now Sindarov, the king is on g3, he brings it back. King f2, king e3. King goes to g7. And Anish now can go rook c1 to h1. I mean, Sindarov could have gone rook c1 to h1, but he goes rook a5. He wants to go here to a8 and maybe to h8. Rook b4 attacks the knight. The king comes in, defending the knight on d4. Rook b6 played. And now Sindarov can go back. Can maybe go to c2. There are too many options, but he takes the pawn. A mistake. And look at Anish's face there. Because he now has 30 extra minutes to work this out. Bishop e6. Beautiful move. If you take here, I take with a check and pick up this pawn. It's a draw. So he goes rook d8. Now very important. Don't take with the bishop. Knight f5 is game over. It's a mate. But Anish is going for the rook. He's seen there's a draw. Rook takes b3. Very interesting move. Knight takes. Rook takes. And now even if you block with the rook, I simply take. He goes to f2 because that would lead to another trade of rooks. Rook b2 check. And the thing to note here is that after king g3, rook takes rook, king takes rook. White has an extra exchange. But this position, beautifully, Anish has understood that it's a draw, it's a fortress here. That is the most amazing part. King e7 attacks the rook on d8, rook a8, king f7. Oh, he brings the king back. He doesn't make it. He plays now king f7. Check. King f8. King goes to f2. King comes up to e8. King e3. And now f5 is where you want to push. But maybe you don't even want to push that. All that Anish wants to do is control the dark square with his king here, and the bishop will control all the light squares, and the pawn is controlling here. Now very important, you can let the white king come here to d6. You can see Anish not even worrying about this fact that, but all he needs is one square on this diagonal to keep moving. See, he just needs this a2. If the king goes here, he'll get c4. Now he gets the b3 square. It's a passive waiting defense, but it works perfectly. The only thing which you should not let happen is give the e7 square to the white king. That shouldn't happen at all costs. So if you give a check here, simply come up to f7. Now Javokhir tries to dominate this bishop, but simply bishop c4. There's just no way to dominate it. If you come and attack with the king, I go back. So rook b4 and now bishop a2. There's one square always on the diagonal. It's amazing how Anish had actually figured out that there was this possibility to give up the exchange. He knew it. Rook check. Once again, an important move. King f8. I mean, king e8 would also work, but king f8, rook b2. And now bishop to c4. Just bringing the bishop in. Rook f2. And maybe now Javokhir finally trying for this f4 break. Or maybe not. Maybe not, because f4 trades. And that's also a draw. He keeps waiting. Rook f1. Kind of the first time that Javokhir has been unable to make progress in this tournament. It's literally with everyone he's managed to do that, and even against Anish today, I think he was very close to getting a lot of pressure. It's just that he took that pawn on d5 and then everything cleared up so quickly. King f7, check, king f8, king d7, who tries to come in with the king. Now this could be a new concept or an idea. Anish simply blocks here, rook attacks the bishop, bishop b3, and now rook to c5. He gives a check, king goes to c6. I wonder what Javokhir is trying actually. Maybe he's just trying to triangulate. He'll try something here. Rook f5. The bishop comes back to attack the rook. And what an interesting move. Because if you take here, this is a lost endgame. So Anish should just play bishop b3. Keeps the bishop here, rook b5. Bishop a2. And now rook to b4. The king goes back to f8. And finally Javokhir says, okay, enough is enough, let's move on. Takes, rook takes. Now attacking this pawn, king g7, maybe king e7. Should be careful. He plays it, he's checked it. Now king here, he plays king e7. Isn't this pawn hanging? But once again, amazing calculation by Anish here. If rook takes f6, he goes king g5 and he's going to win this pawn. Rook f2, attacking the bishop, bishop b3. And the idea is bishop d1 and take the pawn. And rook versus bishop, well, you can try, but I don't think against a player like Anish you should. I mean, he is someone who has all the experience. You know that you just put your king on this corner, put the bishop here, and that's just a draw. King e5, king h5. And Javokhir is like, okay, Anish, let's go and make a draw. What a game this was. Amazing game by both the players. It was truly where an unstoppable force of Javokhir met the immovable object of Anish Giri, who just did not let Javokhir pass through. And now Sindarov is on 6 points out of 7. He maintains his 1.5 point lead over the field because Fabi also drew with Prague. But finally, slowing down a bit as we move into our second rest day, and the first half of the tournament comes to an end. A great defensive effort by Anish Giri.